Well, I'll tell you who is benefiting the most. For one, it's these woke, absurd politicians who give us mindless platitudes and ridiculous statements of no more police. That'll solve the problem. Rashida Tlaib, I agree. Let's get rid of all the police right now. How about we do this? I think your idea was better. Give notice. Let's have every cop in the country say, all right, in 30 days, we won't be working. You know why? They're giving a heads up to the criminals as well as the regular citizens. They may as well announce the purge is going to be a real thing because all the criminals are going to be like, ooh, 30 days, it's on, baby. But I'll tell you who else is making money. These activists who claim to fight for this stuff, they're cashing out. I think a lot of people have seen the story already. This Black Lives Matter leader apparently bought a massive mansion and a bunch of other moderately priced and well, actually they're fairly expensive homes. So this Black Lives Matter lady, I guess she has what, like 3 homes that are like 400 to 500K.
Yeah.
And then one that's 1.4 million.
Yeah.
That's really good for a Marxist. Multiple properties, kind of like socialist Bernie Sanders. He's got what, 3 homes? Hey, good for him. I'm glad they've been able to successfully capitalize on socialism. So we have this story from the Post-Millennial. Black Lives Matter, I guess activist, says story about co-founders. Oh, Black Lives Matter says this.
Yeah.
Story about co-founders' new multi-million-dollar home are fueled by white supremacy. I feel so stupid.
Yeah.
That explains everything.
Right.
Marxists are allowed to have multiple properties. One that's $1.4 million. They're allowed to. That's normal for Marxists, landlords and property owners, and
I mean, but it is in the kind of finest
in the more
Soviet
practical
tradition, right? You have your dashers and you have your dackers, actually, and you have your kind of access to the superhighway lane, and there's nothing new to. I mean, it's so obvious for what it is. There you have, right, a great example of just the absurdity of the kind of woke thing that is white supremacist, that everything is white supremacist. And it is, I mean, literally we are now living in a, Curb Your Enthusiasm sketch. And I actually saw it, it was a few years ago actually, with Larry David, and he was saying, we do have a lot of like conservative viewers watch the show. And he's like, it's kind of interesting. It's like, yeah, well, because reality is becoming that show, that it's that ridiculous. I mean, it is interesting though that you don't see that many people on the kind of, I guess like Bill Maher does talk about this a bit, the absurdity of it, but it's kind of funny how the crowd nervously laughs and the guests what's more interesting, how these high profile guests feel more of an impulse to be like, well, Bill, Do
you see that lady? Who was that lady? She called Gina Carano a white supremacist or a Nazi?
Yeah.
Former senator.
Yeah, whoever she was. She was like, well,
she's Heidi Heitkamp, right?
Yeah.
North
and,
Dakota.
And Bill Maher barely pushed back at all.
Right.
Yeah. Like, if someone said that here, I'd be like, that's not true. You're lying.
Right.
Like, no, we're not playing that game.
Literally
That's not
true.
And it's funny because I say this about Enrique Tarrio, the chairman of the Proud Boys, literally a black dude. Right. And they're like, he's a white supremacist. I'm like, no, he's not. No, he's literally black. And Proud Boys have multiracial. You can criticize the Proud Boys for a lot of things.
Yeah.
Just criticize them for the things that are true.
Right.
Instead, they lie, and I'm not going to play that game. Bill Maher should have come out and been much more harsh to this woman. He's like, she's not. Is she really? And then he goes, well, definitions change. Is that it?
I also think part of the interesting thing here is, it's like, this person's a Nazi, whatever. And I find, my American grandfather was Pacific Marine, still around, 96, which is great. And my British grandfather was a RAF Bomber Command pilot. And so there's a lot of debate, morally right, bombing German cities. But, you study the Nazis. I studied a lot about amateur hour, but read a lot about them. It is kind of amusing with the American like woke left talking Nazi white supremacy, because they really haven't how many of them have read Mein Kampf? How many of them have engaged seriously with the literature to understand? Because it is a profoundly unpleasant ideology, but simplifying it is not a good idea.
Well, hold on. I think many of them are in fact familiar with it because, as we know, James Lindsay, Helen Pluckrose, and Peter Boghossian altered a portion of Minecraft into feminist ideology instead, and it got published in a scientific journal. So they've certainly read some of the I think, to be fair, there's some heavy criticism of that, but the general idea was the intention and the targeting of groups was what they poured it over. And then someone accused them like, all they did was use the non-proper nouns because the proper nouns were changed. And I'm like, that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
Like when he's like, this group is evil and we're the best and here's our plan, and you just change the name of the group. That's kind of the point.
Yeah.
So these people, they're all about power.
Power.
You know, the Black Lives Matter organization is basically saying, we don't pay her. She's not getting paid by us. It's fake news. That's not the news. The news is that a prominent Black Lives Matter activist owns multiple homes and a very expensive one. It's not, I guess maybe some people infer or assume that she's making money from Black Lives Matter. I didn't assume that. I just thought these people were hypocrites claiming to fight for the common people when actually they're just rich people, because I've seen it time and time again.
Al Sharpton is the most ludicrous personality in this regard. I mean, it's quite astonishing, actually, that, you know, you saw it was a few years ago that he needs his first class, you know, seat to go to speaking gigs, and he always turns up and then he disappears. I think Michael Brown's family were talking about this, how they felt they'd been, and it is just, I mean, the cost of it is just quite astonishing, right? That they have. We actually had an incident where I live in Washington, and I don't want to be too specific because it'll seem like I'm using it for my own. But a 19-year-old black guy was shot and killed, and no one. The reaction of people on the street who were very much, you know, defund the police signs. Yeah. On that night was, you know, they weren't terribly interested as he was calling for help, and there's more to it but there is a lot of again, enter profanity of choice that is really not just pathetic but pretty outrageous in the sense that these are people, you know, people dying, right? And we should want solutions that mitigate that. You know what I've been kind of pissed off about? I hear this a lot from a lot of conservatives. They'll say, you know, the Black Lives Matter people don't seem to care about, you know, inner city youth or what's going on in Chicago and Chirac, right? How come they don't protest and demand justice for the Black lives in Chicago who are victims of this crime all the time? I hear that a lot. Now, I've met some people who do focus on that, and they're smaller community activists, but definitely the high-profile grifters make their quick buck off pushing this institutional racism narrative. I got a similar complaint, though. Where are the gun rights advocacy groups and conservatives going into the same neighborhoods and providing legal defense for the young black men whose only crime was possession of a firearm, right, which the Second Amendment says you're allowed to do? It's a hugely good point. You know, well, I'll just leave it at that without, you know, getting into rehashing a bunch of old stories. I would say, I don't know if he's been on the show. If not, I mean, obviously you pick your own guest, but Show Michael Singleton, you know, a friend of mine, does a black gun owner, does a TV show about it, engaged in, you know, some of this stuff, but, you know, so there are, you know, there's actually, though, that's a very good point. At the judicial, at the level of the big, well-funded conservative legal defense, these things representing religious issues, right? A life that doesn't, you know, you're right. That's a big gap. Yeah. There are a lot of, particularly young black men, but even outside of that, there's a lot of people in this country who get charged with illegal possession of a firearm, and that's it. Yeah. Now, if they're committing a crime with the gun, okay, fine, I get it. You commit a crime, you commit a crime. I mean, like if they're robbing somebody, if they're carjacking or doing something like that, or using the gun in the process of a crime. If someone literally is like, I would like to bear arms, you know, the Constitution says shall not be infringed. I would like to see, you know, the NRA. I'm not a big fan of the NRA, but so I don't think they would do anything. But I'd like to see more gun rights groups actually be like, we're going to go to Washington, D.C. We're going to go to Chicago. We're going to go to L.A. We're going to go to Compton. We're going to talk to these. We're going to find these young men. And we're going to look at that charge sheet where it says illegal possession of a firearm. And we're going to be like, nah, we're going to give you the legal defense because this is not right. Second Amendment is clear. Right. These guys didn't do anything wrong. It's similar to how I think the left overlooks violent crime in these neighborhoods as well. It's not going to play well. I mean, we got a viral video that's been going around for a while of a woman holding her baby, getting shot and killed, and then lying on top of her baby to protect her from these drive-by shooters. And a lot of conservatives are like, where's Black Lives Matter? Where's the left complaining about this? And I'm like, it's a good point. You know, they scream when there's a cop and an accidental, an accident occurs or a tragedy or in this instance, negligence. But they're not screaming when, you know, things go bad in Chicago. They're not screaming about the gang violence. It's just the cops. Now I get it. There's a fair point too. Cops are in positions of authority. Right. So I understand that. And then there's an argument for the conservatives. It's like some of these guys who have these guns are actually in gangs and they have guns for not good reasons. But at the same time, I'm like, honestly, man, I think we need to have some principle in the matter. If we're for Black lives, we're for the gang members as well. And if we're for gun ownership, we're for gang members as well. One of the things that I'm surprised, and you know, there may be, well, actually, I don't think there is a good reason for it, but why we haven't seen more prosecutions, the FBI, ATF using RICO statutes, so racketeering, in the same way that they do against Russian organized crime, Eastern European groups, you know, MS-13, whatever. where actually, if you can build up your evidentiary picture, you could have a pretty significant judicial effect. I think part of the reason is that some of the gangs, in terms, that young black men tend to be a part of, there's less, the economic impact on society is lower in terms of criminal finances. And so the incentive for the FBI is to go after higher value things.
Right.
But at the moral level and the life level, you would think that would be something perhaps everyone could get behind. Of course, I'm sure I'm totally delusional about that, but being creative here, right, it is surely something we need to do more of, because it's pretty, again, those mansions.
I think I got a good, overlapping nonprofit idea that I'm going to see if I can, get set up. And so I've been talking to a few people about this, and it's quite literally to find young men who are charged with possession of a firearm, and that's it. And then, so I think Chicago is a good target for this, because I think maybe this could be a position where, a lot of the Black Lives Matter people, who are not too Democratic establishment, where they're just anti-gun for no reason, but a lot of these actual leftist personalities who believe in Black Lives Matter, I'll be like, how about we get these guys out of jail and help them get their lives fixed because they didn't do anything wrong. They're enjoying their Second Amendment rights. And then I think a lot of the gun owners, libertarians, and even some conservatives might be like, all right, we agree with that as well. So I'm like, maybe that's a good thing where we can be like, hey, we're going to do this thing. Don't yell at us because we're trying to help and, make lives better for everybody. And
I bet in a lot of those cases, right, it's going to be, well, we know it's that person carrying that gun because they're in a very high crime neighborhood and they don't want to get robbed. I mean, it is basic level Second Amendment stuff, right?
It's like very rudimentary, just self-defense.
Right.
I want to protect myself, and that's true for a lot of these guys.
Right.
I'm from Chicago. I see guys who are like, I'll be damned if I'm going to be a victim to these people, these gangs. I don't want to have anything to do with it, but they want to defend themselves. I will say it'd be really funny if we start, we find people with standing. You get a young black man. He's got a 1911 or something, 45, and he gets arrested and charged for it. That's the only crime. The cops stop him. You're under arrest. Felony gun possession. We come in. We say we're going to sue, and then it starts making its way up the courts. What are the Democrats going to do? What's their argument going to be? We're actually defending the rights of minorities,
right,
and gunners at the same time. Are they going to come in and say that black man should be in jail? Oh, I'd love to see him do that. No, I think that black man should not be in jail. I think he has a right to defend himself the same as everybody else. I heard the Black Panthers were out in Minnesota on Sunday morning, and they were armed to the teeth. And I say, good.
Yeah, right.
They're allowed to do it.
Absolutely.
Good American citizens.
Happened.
And nothing happened. Well, not from them.
Right.
Other people went out later and started trashing stuff. It wasn't the Panthers.
Right.
They have a constitutional right to protect themselves and to bear arms. And I think they're good American citizens doing so.
Right. Absolutely. Totally agree.
I'd like to see it happen. We'll see where we can go with that.
Yeah. And again, it's so instrumental, right? That is so. Talk about riots, right? In 2011, at least in riots, as a gunner, you can have a gun in your home, and you could at least have relative confidence, that you might be able to protect your family. In 2011 in London, there were riots over 3 days, and the police were totally overwhelmed. There was no, if you think about sort of older people, people with health issues, it was anarchy for them. People could come into their homes, take stuff, do whatever, and all that, their only recourse with the cops. And more than that, the people doing it knew that, right?
Yeah.
Here, at least, there is a moment of pause, you would hope. Some people, obviously, there isn't. But you're going to walk in and, good night.
I'll tell you this, out in the middle of nowhere and a little bit further west of where we are, you see a no trespassing sign?
Yeah, don't come in.
Yeah, you definitely gonna obey that no trespassing sign. So like I've been out, I was thinking about this. I was driving through West Virginia, and I look at all these houses, and I'm like, if you even thought of robbing this house, you're gonna die.
Right.
Like, don't commit crimes. And so, people are reasonable. They're not just going to randomly shoot a person they see on their property, but they're going to warn you, and they're going to be armed to the teeth. Most of the people who live out here, they're armed because cops are few and far between.
Right.
So, it's interesting to me, like I was mentioning earlier, the cost for the activist of getting caught rioting is almost nothing. Their life will not be harmed in any way. And it's really fascinating because destroying property, burning things down, and literally causing harm to people are very serious crimes. Yet going back to this, I hear these stories of, a 28-year-old dad in Chicago who's scared of gang violence, so he gets an illegal gun. It's not literally illegal according to the Constitution, but the state says it is. And that's his crime. He gets to go to prison. He gets to get locked up and have his life ruined because he wants to protect himself from gang violence in the city that the police can't control. That to me is insane. Then you have these rioters who go out and destroy everything. Nothing happens to them.
It is interesting as well if we think about the left's view on voter ID laws, right? That it's prohibitive in terms of cost. It disproportionately affects minority communities. And yet the same principle is not applied to, to buy a gun license, to go through all that. Well, no, that's okay. That's something completely different. Right. It is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing. Voter ID is racist because it disenfranchises minorities. What about when minorities want to go buy a gun?
Right.
Is gun ID is racist?
Right.
That's a funny thing, too, about this voting stuff, when I think it was like David Hogg who said, buying a gun shouldn't be easier than voting. And I was like, are you suggesting that guns should be mailed to everyone's home when they don't ask for it? Because mail-in ballots got mailed out to everybody, even if you ask for it or not. Could you imagine if you're like, you turn 18 and they mail you an AR-15?
Right.
I mean, that'd be awesome. I'd be like, great. No, that wouldn't be awesome. A lot of dumb people would have. Right. I mean, think about that. A gun and just lying next to someone's mailbox. Right. Nah, that's not a good idea. We don't want to do that. Like, I get it. Go to a shop. Have the weapon properly transferred. Be responsible. Take it seriously. Follow the rules. Get safety training and all that stuff. Be responsible. But that's just, it's an amazing gap in how they actually view the rights of minorities. It's politically useful to be like, voter ID is wrong. Okay, well, let's get them all guns. I think the Black Panthers should have guns. Absolutely. I think these people in Chicago, Minnesota, wherever, have a right to have guns. Where yet, Democrats? Where's Black Lives Matter on this one?
Yeah.
We can all fight for this. The Black Panthers showed up in Richmond, Virginia, I think it was, when the 2A people were all protesting. And it's funny how the media tries framing the Second Amendment guys as like white supremacists. And I'm like, they're taking selfies with the Black Panthers smiling. Right. Like these people are all very much like libertarian, like, hey man, you get your gun, I got mine, and we'll high five each other on the way out.
Yeah.
I was in Texas years ago and I saw a bunch of, guys, look kind of like militia guys, standing around at a Trump rally with guns. And a guy showed up wearing a shirt. I think it was a Black Guns Matter shirt. And it was a tall black dude with a beard and some probably a 5.56 AR-15 of some sort. And he walked right up to these right-wing Trumpsters and they shook hands, started talking, laughing with each other. And it's because they had common interest. They probably didn't agree politically on certain things, but they were very much pro-gun, pro-liberty, pro each other's rights. And both the white guy and the black guy recognize each other as respecting the rights of the individual. I think that's what we need more of. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.